Hello, everyone. Welcome to Women Seeking Wholeness. I'm Cherie Burton. This is a podcast for women and men who long to feel, express, and be who they truly are. Today, I have Tia Jade. She holds certifications in neuro-linguistic programming and integrative therapeutic alignment, and she's just become a really successful and dedicated relationship coach. Though her emphasis, and the reason I wanted to have her on, we met through a mutual friend, and I learned firsthand through some really personal conversations with her about her personal journey back to her own mental health. And that's the name of this episode, A Woman's Journey Back to Mental Health. And just to ask you, does it sometimes feel like you're spinning out of orbit, spiraling down? Healing yourself is a hero's journey. No bones about it. So she's going to share her odyssey, the one she never could have anticipated, almost taking her own life. She overcame postpartum depression and a bipolar disorder diagnosis. Some of the key components to her getting well were to stay true to herself, to focus on continuous growth, and really narrowing in on trauma release. So in this episode, we'll talk about how people form a relationship to pain. And one of my favorite topics that Tia and I explore in this episode is how to dance with your feminine energy and how that can be a big wake-up call to your soul, your body, and really enhance your healing journey. Tia, welcome to Women Seeking Wholeness.
Cherie, thank you so much. I'm so honored to be here. So honored that you invited me. And I hope that I can serve your audience in the best and highest way possible.
Well, I know you will. I feel it. So thank you. Let's dive into this. You have quite a powerful journey with mental health. And let's go there. I know that it's probably a process. It's an ongoing, as everything is, right? Mm-hmm. But walk us through kind of like your low moment, if you will, and kind of where you were at when it got really real.
Yeah, sure. So I would say my journey started about 10 years ago. That's when I was forced into a position where I really had to take charge of my own mental health in a very serious way. So it was January 2010 when I had my son, have this beautiful baby. I had I had a daughter at the time. She was a year older. I found myself in an extremely low point mentally, struggling with postpartum depression, went to doctors, did the whole doctor thing, did the whole antidepressant thing, the whole therapist thing, was told, hey, don't worry, postpartum depression only lasts for a year. Okay, working through, but continuously I find myself really struggling. And when I say really struggling, getting out of bed, having conversations, living life without just breaking down and crying. And it was really scary. So I'm scared, right? I'm scared for my well-being because this darkness would take me over. Come to find out that many, many women, I connected to many women on the journey, come to find out that a lot of women have postpartum depression that have had traumatic pasts. I've had a traumatic past. Women struggle with, will have babies, will have postpartum, will be diagnosed with postpartum, and will continue to battle depression and anxiety. And I didn't know this. So I was so angry and upset that I was given this framework of like, hey, don't worry, it only lasts for a year and you'll get through it and just take antidepressants and you'll be fine. I was so angry because that wasn't true for me. And I found out it wasn't true for a lot of other women. So there's no end in sight for me. So you asked about my lowest point. So my lowest point was one night I'm home and I realize I'm not getting out of this. This isn't ending for me. I think my son was 2 years old at the time. I'm not getting over this. This is not over. It's not ending. And there's no end in sight. And life is so painful that I can't do it anymore. And I make the decision, I'm going to end things. Tonight's the night. And I remember I called a friend and she had no idea what was going on. I could really cry talking about this because she comes over and I just said, I need your help right now. I didn't elaborate. She knew, the people in my life knew about my struggle, but not to the depths of what it was for me. She comes over and she's just hanging out in the house. I just needed another warm body there. My husband was at work. I just needed to get through like putting the kids to bed. So she's sitting there kind of just babysitting me and I'm reading the kids a book and I'm thinking to myself, this is the last book that I will ever read to you. It was like, it was done in my mind. I couldn't. And that's why I can so understand people that are I can understand the selfish act of taking your own life because you're in so much pain, you're on fire. And when you're on fire, you're not thinking about you need to be put out. So,
and not on fire in a good way, almost like a chemical storm, not a good fire. Yeah.
Not a good fire. Thank you. Yeah, that's a good point. Right. It's like a pain. It's an extreme pain, emotional pain. It's funny because I actually walked on fire at UPW.
Tony Robbins?
Yeah.
Me too. Yep.
It's
my
cool,
older
isn't
kids.
It?
Yeah.
Amazing. Yeah. Well, I can, and I'm sure you feel the same way. I know I could do that again, but I don't think I could go through that again. You know what I'm saying? So it's like the emotional
psychological toll. Yeah.
It's so painful.
Well, that feeling of despair, of utter hopelessness.
Yeah.
What people don't realize, and this, because I've had conversations that my sister took her life, and had 5 children.
Sorry.
And yeah, thank you. We've had some space around it, but I've since attracted a lot of people to me who either have lost a loved one to suicide or they themselves have been suicidal. And the thing I keep hearing is they're not trying to be selfish. It's just that they're trying to get out of pain.
Yeah.
And in my sister's mind, I don't know if this ran through your mind, but what in her mind, she was relieving people of the burden of her, and that she couldn't be the kind of mother that she wanted to be.
Yeah.
And it was like utter hopelessness. Like
that. You nailed it, Sherry. That is exactly what I was thinking. It's utter hopelessness. Yeah. Cause you feel like I'm a burden and I'm not helping anybody here. It's just a terrible place to be. And I wouldn't wish it on anybody. And I'm so sorry that your sister had to go through that and that she, in the end, there was no way out for her, because for me, what got me out was I guess I was diagnosed with bipolar disorder. So I would kind of shift out of that headspace, and it was traumatic. Like I would really from one minute to the next. So I made it through. Well, my husband was supposed to go out that night, and that's when I was going to end my life.
And then you were saying your friend like called you or came over or?
So I had a friend, she came over. I didn't tell her what was going on because I didn't want her to know. I didn't want anyone to know. So she had left, and my husband came home and she had left. And what the plan was, my husband's going out. He's going to leave. I'm going to, take a bottle of pills. And he was about to leave. His hand's on the doorknob and he's going out, and the kids are down, and I'm ready. I'm in that space. Like, this is what's going to happen. And he turns around and says, you know what? I'm not going to go out tonight. So that was just a miracle. Had he walked out the door, I can't say for certain that I would have, that I would still be here talking to you. So that was just a miracle for me. And that was the wake up call I needed to say, okay, if I don't handle this, if I don't take full responsibility for this and stop blaming the doctors and the therapists and the psychiatrists who were so subpar in their care, then I'm not going to get through this. I got to completely own this journey, because this is life and death right now. So it was. Did you tell
your husband what was happening with you or what you were planning?
Years later, I did. And he was really hurt. He said, how could you have done that? How could you even think of doing that to me? And, he had every right to feel that hurt. Because I was not thinking about him. I was not thinking about anybody.
You can only, it's just like the pain is like, it's like it's a fire. Like you say, like you can only see your own pain.
Yeah. Yeah.
But that's powerful that you pivoted to self-responsibility. Why do you think that shifted? I mean, you obviously had some kind of, we all have the will to live, right?
Yeah.
But what do you think it was that just turned you into like, oh, I can take accountability here. I can, somehow show up.
Yeah, that's a good question. It was a gift that was given to me that I believe that not everybody has that, because people do go through the suicide process and they end up taking their lives, as you know. So something just hit me where I had a moment of clarity. And it was because my husband didn't leave. I had that space to say, oh my God, what am I doing? And that was enough to just kind of wake me up and say, I gotta take control here, because nobody's coming to save me. I have to save myself. And what I realized from there, that the dark night of the soul, as many people call it,
yes,
is not it's not anything it's not a terrible thing. It feels terrible, but what it is actually, it's a call to action. Life is alerting us to the pain that we've stored. And that's why I said that so many women that I spoke to had past trauma and have dealt with depression for years, because this was just chemically, my body was freaking out, but it was this awakening. It led me to this awakening that said, I got to take care of this pain. This is pain that it's just getting worse and worse, because the more you store that pain and the more it cycles through you. So I actually see that as a tremendous gift now, having gone through it. Again, I wouldn't wish it on my worst enemy, but what it did was it allowed me to handle, and I'm still handling it, because I've had a lot of past trauma in my life. That pain that I went through as a young kid, and you know how it is. It's like generationally, we carry pain from our ancestors and our lineage. And
yes, and it's not all our stuff.
It's not all our stuff.
And we empathically carry things for people that are still on the earth, not just our ancestors, but like our children. Like if you have a child going through something, usually you'll like identify with it. I've had a hard time with that, just with all my kids, just trying to like, oh, okay, I can't carry this for you. Yeah. Hand this back. But sounds like you're a really sensitive soul. And when you said it was a gift, what the word that came to my mind is it was grace.
It was grace.
It was grace. Yeah. And that's just like, you didn't do anything to earn it or whatever. It just is.
Nothing. Yeah.
And it wasn't your path to complete suicide. It was, there was a different pathway for you.
Yes.
So what have you learned about mental health that maybe is lesser known, that's, not mainstream maybe, but has worked for you, has helped you get your footing back?
Thank you so much for that question. Because I've really been, as of late, diving into this more and more and more, and really trying to embody this. And I learned this I want to give credit to Michael Singer, author of
Untethered Soul.
Author of The Untethered Soul and the Surrender Experiment. He also has a course called The Path of Surrender. So what he's taught me and what I gleaned from him very much is that when that pain, that psycho-emotional pain hits us, that's our you could label it many things. You could label it trauma. He calls it samskara. This is the yogic term for impressions, how life made an impression on you. But it's basically stored pain, stored energy that happened to us years ago through some outside event that we interpreted as painful or hurtful. And it was so uncomfortable that we did not allow that event to fully pass through us, to really experience that event fully. We resisted it and we stored that pain. So when that pain comes up, it hurts, because it was stored with pain. It's painful.
And sometimes more energy gathers into it, right?
Yes. Right. That bigger energy.
Yeah.
Yes. 100%. And that those patterns cycle, because they're not able to fully come up, the energy cycles back around and we find ourselves in these behavioral patterns and these emotional patterns. And that's what that is. It's like the energy, it cannot release because the heart isn't open to it because we're resisting it. It hurts. It's so uncomfortable. And that's not our fault. However, when it comes up, what that is, even though it feels painful, what it actually is, the truth of what it is that's an opportunity to release that of what we stored.
Otherwise, it wouldn't be surfacing.
Otherwise, it wouldn't be surfacing.
Your body's so intelligent. It knows timing and I cannot tell you, Tia, how many people I've met who have had past trauma and maybe they just forgot about it, shelved it, stuffed it, repressed it. But then it isn't until they're in a safe zone in their life, like they have emotional safety, maybe they're in a safer relationship, or maybe they're settled in somehow to themselves. Then that's when the body's like, oh, she has supports around her. Now is the time for this to come out.
Oh, that is
and then
so
they blame, and that
Sherry.
person blames themselves. They're like, what's wrong with me? I have a great life. I have people who love me. Why am I suicidal right now?
You're so articulate in that. You nailed it. That's right. So what it feels like is I can't handle this. I remember saying, when I went through postpartum, I would say, when my husband would leave to work every morning, I would say, you're leaving me. It's like I'm a paraplegic and you're leaving me in a wheelchair with these two kids. I cannot do this, and that's what it feels like. And I'm not taking that away from anybody. I get that. But what's actually happening is like what you said, because you're experiencing it, that actually means that you can handle it. Your brain is shedding light on this pain now, whereas before it was repressed and it wasn't coming up.
Yes.
So what a beautiful way of saying it. So that's how I look at it. That's my relationship now. And that's how I got into relationships, because I had a relationship with this pain, and it was an unhealthy relationship where it was living inside me, and we were the odd couple where I was like, what the, can I curse? I can.
Yes, you can curse.
What the fuck? Why
That's the best word for that right now. It's like, what am I doing right now? What is this?
Yeah. What the fuck? Why are you here? Go away. And I hate you. And I hate myself that I feel this way. And I hate that I'm experiencing this. But I had to reframe my relationship. And I had a therapist at the time. He was actually my husband's addiction counselor. His name is Mike Pasternak. I don't know if he'll ever hear this, but he saved my life. And I don't know how he got me to this point in our therapeutic relationship, but I remember saying to him, I don't remember anything that he said to me. I just remember I said to him one day, so are you saying that I could be happy and depressed at the same time? Like I could be grateful that I'm having this experience and still feel all these feelings? And he was like, yeah, like that's what I've been trying to tell you. And I didn't get it until that one moment. So I kind of thought about it like I saw a video of, are you familiar with Nick Santos? He has a much longer name, but he shortens it. No. Nick is a YouTube personality. He's on social media. He's an amazing soul. I saw him live at an event, and Nick does not have arms and he does not have legs.
Oh, he came and spoke at a doTERRA convention. Yes, I have. I know who he is. Yes. I was a blubbering mess when he was talking.
I believe that.
I mean, just the vignettes they did at the video vignettes of how he's moved through life since he was a baby with no arms and legs. It's just,
So that beautiful soul also saved my life, because I would watch him and I would say, okay, I have a handicap. Let's say this depression that I'm experiencing, it's my handicap. Okay, Nick has a handicap and look what he's doing. He's helping people. He's out there. So I kind of said to myself, you know what? This is my handicap. And it's so inspiring. I'm so inspired by people who can live with a handicap and be joyful in it and just find the joy of life and not allow that to.
So inspiring.
Yeah.
Yes. There's actually a biblical scripture coming to my mind. Maybe I should share. When you come to a space of acceptance, and maybe this is part of the surrender process, that Michael Singer talks about, but I love the surrender experiment. That's just an amazing, I have an Audible, but there's this biblical scripture of, I think it's Paul, where he's saying he has this quote unquote thorn in the flesh. Mm-hmm. And he gets to the space where he's just not even praying for it to go away, because it's his teacher. And there's it's not how it's phrased in the Bible, but the idea is that you could expand on that, there are some things that we, as souls, we incarnated to experience fully. And were those things to be taken out completely healing, let's just say, it wouldn't teach our soul everything, the whole spectrum of what we came here to learn. Mm-hmm. And so, sometimes the healing, right, is not to be status quo or in the normal range, whatever that is. Yeah. Sometimes the healing is to live with this and master it, temper it, work with it. Let it, like you said, the fire, that reference metaphor, let the fire move you. Yes. Because if you didn't have that fire, or didn't have that quote unquote inflammatory response in your body, then where's the growth? Mm-hmm.
Yes. Oh, Sherry, that's so beautifully put.
But I can see that in you. I can see how it's refined you in that process.
And it still is, because, like what you just said, that doesn't apply just to those extreme moments of pain. No. It applies to, my kid brings home a test and I'm not happy with the grade. My husband said something to me. He was late. I didn't like that. You better learn to work with life. You better learn to work with that, or you will be pushed and pulled in every single direction, and it will be really hard. And I'm a student of that right now. So I'm not saying I don't have moments where I'm knocked off center, but as human beings, I think collectively we gotta work with this stuff, that comes up.
Absolutely. And I know some of your work has involved, because you really, like you said, dove into relationships, because you realize that everything's about relationships, right? We form relationships to our trauma. We form relationships to our pain. We form, but when it comes to relationships with other humans, it's only ever a reflection of what the relationship is to ourselves.
Yes.
So when you talk about the spiritual aspect of relationships, what does that mean to you? I know you're teaching about this and you're helping people through this process. What is that?
Yeah. Again, thank you for this question and allowing me to share this, because this is truly like what lights my soul on fire. Only because of the effects that I saw. So I hope people know, my real hope is that people know that through the spiritual work that we take upon ourselves in relationships, meaning to take the responsibility and the power back of okay, I'm not happy with my relationship. I'm going to fully own that, because that's step one. If you're not owning it, you can't do anything about it because it's not yours,
right.
Until we fully own that and say, okay, I'm not happy with you. You are the form and matter that's alerting me to this unhappiness right now, but you're not the cause of that. You're merely the messenger of life. So like my husband, for example, I didn't share this with you, but we did not make it. We almost did not make it.
Just like Jeff and I.
Exactly.
I'm really open with people about it now. I'm like, you know what?
Yeah.
Yeah, it is what it is.
And I love that. Yeah. And thank you for being open with that, because I'm sure it helps so many people to have that vulnerability. But yeah, and I'm having that vulnerability with you because I wasn't happy. So it was really hard because every day was like, God damn it, I'm not happy with you. Why can't you change? And then what would happen is I would express that in various forms, either by just saying that, like, why do you have to be the way you are? Or I would be passive aggressive about it. You know,
all the projecting, all the blaming, all the, like, it's all about you.
Criticism, 100%, all of that. I was involved in all of that, which is why I'm so happy to come back and tell people that does not work. Like, if you want to spin your wheels, just do that, because it doesn't work. Because what ends up happening is people can't, what I was doing to my beautiful husband is I wasn't giving him the safe space for him to be his amazing, beautiful, unbelievable self. I was unconsciously squashing that because I was unconsciously squashing that in myself. So I decided one day, and I had a beautiful coach. Her name, you see, I've had many teachers along the path. Her name is Simone Mercer Higgins. She actually, I went to her. She was helping me with my money mindset and investing and managing my finances and everything like that. But of course, the spiritual journey takes many forms, and our relationship to money can also manifest in our relationships, in our intimate relationships, or et cetera.
Yes, they're all interconnected. All our relationships.
Yeah. So we talked a lot about, I would come to her a lot about how I just felt really frustrated in my marriage. And one day she just said to me, you know what? Stop being the victim. Either accept your situation or make it better. But all you're doing is complaining. And I was like, my ego was like,
you're like, who does she think she is? What?
Yeah. Oh my God. I am not victimizing myself, And I noticed that, because thank God I had practices that helped me notice what was coming up. So I noticed that. I said, okay, I'm pretty triggered right now. This is something's here. It's using that pain as a stepping stone for growth. So it's like, okay, I'm feeling triggered. What can I do with this? How can this help me? Because there's a reason I'm being triggered. Here's where the growth is. And I said, okay. So one particular trigger in my marriage with my husband was I was really triggered by his insecurity. And whenever I sensed his lack of confidence, his lack of decisiveness, I would go into kind of like a repulsion response. Like, I don't like that. I'm not attracted to that. Why can't he be different? Why can't he make decisions? Et cetera, et cetera. And I'm embarrassed to admit that, but you know what? That's what was happening for me. Yeah.
I think that's pretty common, actually, for strong women to feel that way.
It is. Yeah. It is. Yeah. Yeah. So I was wanting more masculine energy from him. So I said, okay, Tia, I'm judging my husband's these qualities. Well, how do I judge myself for having those qualities? Because what's happening is I'm projecting them onto him. Do I judge myself? And I was like, I do. So what I noticed was I had my own, as humans, we have masculine and feminine energy. And I had a strong sense of feminine energy, but my masculine energy wasn't so evolved. It wasn't so mature. And what it would do is it would put me down if I wasn't productive enough, or if I wasn't decisive enough. I would have those inner judgments. So I would say, okay, I'm judging him because I'm lacking this need. It's a need that I have. And how am I depriving myself of this need because I'm not able to access it in my relationship? So I took full ownership of that. And the minute I noticed, it just takes that microsecond of seeing that trigger and saying, okay, I'm going to use this trigger, and I would use it. And oh my God, so what was happening is I was evolving, and I was releasing all this judgment on myself and all this lack of self-confidence within myself. And that was happening. And that was really beautiful because it allowed me to just fall in love with myself deeper and deeper. But what ended up happening with my husband, a byproduct of that, was he began stepping up in a way that I was like, blown away. It was like he just made this 180. And I really don't believe, it's wild to say this, but I really don't believe he even changed all that much. I think it was just my perception of him. And then once I gave him the space to just be himself, and I was fully loving of him because I was loving of myself, so I was able to give that to him. And also, by the way, realizing I really like that, you know? So it's like, bless you. I really like, you're welcome, feeling this way. This feels way better than like, oh, I'm noticing that I don't like this and he's doing this and I don't like that he's doing this. And why can't he be a man? Yeah. I don't like feeling that way. I really like feeling love and acceptance and compassion and share, you know, the shared experience of like, yeah, babe, you know, I'm also struggling here. Like, I get it. You don't always have to be this, you know, strong person for me. You can fall apart, and like, that's okay, because I'm okay with myself falling apart. So I'm okay with you falling apart. And I like feeling that way. This is a way better feeling. What was I doing all those years? It was crazy, you know?
Yeah.
And I see women stuck in that.
For sure. Yeah. Jeff and I had that same kind of interplay with, you know, we both had our unhealthy masculine and feminine stuff going on inside of ourselves that, you know, just needed a flashlight shown on it, honestly, and validated. Yeah. But yeah, that dynamic of like, you know, they're just mirrors, right? They're just a mirror for what's unhealed in us. And it's like, why am I having such a strong reaction to this behavior or this pattern I see in my spouse, partner? It's because I haven't healed that pattern personally in myself. And my subconscious is like, hi, Cherie. You know, that thing you're all mad about Jeff with? Well, guess what? You wouldn't be mad if it was integrated in you. Yeah. And so that masculine and feminine, I think it gets misconstrued what those energies actually are. It's not gender specific. Oh, it's just, they have different ways they interact chemically in us and energetically. So for me, I was leading in my unhealthy masculine to overcompensate for some of the feminine qualities that I didn't feel safe to express. Right. Yes. Yes. And, you know, we both had some of our own issues with, you know, early years and how we saw some unhealthy dynamics, not just at home, but in society and what was modeled to us with these energies and these roles. So coming back to the spiritual aspect of what relationships really, I believe that they're just teachers. That's all they are. What's been your most powerful realization, I guess, as you've come back, you know, you talked about kind of healing your marriage. I mean, when do we ever heal our marriage? Whatever is that, we're always just on the path of realization. Yeah. But so what is, I guess, maybe some of your more important discoveries about what makes a marriage happy or what makes a partnership or relationship happy?
Wow. Okay. Great question. And I really also honor you so much for taking that perspective. It's hard for people. So that's one realization. It's hard for people to take ownership because it means that everything that they've been complaining about and everything that they've been unhappy about is really just an illusion. You know, it manifested in this way, but the root of it is ourselves. Yes. So when we can release the shame of that, you know, like, yes, you are projecting, but that's okay. Like, it's okay that you're doing that because you're a freaking human being and you're not going to be perfect.
You didn't know any better. Now you do.
You didn't know any better. Yeah. So once we release that shame, and like tools for releasing the shame that I found really powerful are like EFT tapping, meditation, just kind of bringing awareness, like, oh, I'm feeling shame right now. And just loving on that shame. Inner child work and mirror work and shadow work is like very, very powerful. Yeah. Just seeing that shadow side of ourselves, loving that shadow, you know, just really loving and accepting that part of ourselves that we said, no, it's wrong. I shouldn't have that. releasing of the release of that shame is the doorway, the pathway into that ownership. And that ownership, once you take that ownership, there's nothing that you can't do, because you're saying, I take full ownership of the experience of my life, which means you can have any experience. And that's what's better than that. I mean, that puts full control back in our hands. So that's one. And the other thing is, as women, I think as feminine energies, I'll say that it feels really good. I know I like when I don't have to take control all the time. I like the feeling, I like the feeling of being in control. Obviously, that's my masculine, but I also like the feeling of not being in control, of just letting go. Oh God, that feels so
like surrender
good.
again, right? Just release.
So that feminine energy, I want to dance with that. I want to play with that. So when I'm feeling like resistance to taking that responsibility, I actually tap into that. Well, you know what? Like, I feel helpless right now. Isn't there like a deliciousness in, and I know this can sound strange because helplessness isn't a good feeling, but when it's an experience that we want, when everything lines up just perfect, then we're okay with that. We're okay with letting go of control in that way. So I just like to make my experience of life my own as much as possible, and not count on the outside world to tell me how to feel, to dictate how I should feel. So where I'm getting to is, you can actually have fun in every experience of life, even the experiences that you don't like. For example, like you said, the trigger, the mirror, like, oh, this is coming up. Well, my attitude now is that when that comes up, and I got this from Mr. Singer, get excited. Like, this is coming up, this pain, this trigger, this whatever it is, this discomfort, this is coming up, so that you can release it. Yes. I don't want this.
Yeah, I think what happens is we identify with that feeling so much that we don't even have the thought to have fun with it, or to ask what it's teaching us, because we just go unconscious because it's so intense. So I love that, just kind of being the presence behind the trigger, behind the emotion.
Yes.
And
well, Sherry, I just want to share with you really quickly that you gave me a really powerful access point into this, because we spoke a while ago and you told me that sensuality is experiencing the five senses. And am I saying that accurately?
Yes. Yeah. That's what being sensual is. Yes. It's not really sexuality.
Yes. And that really hit me. And I have carried that for this entire time, because what I've learned is that if I can actually get in my body and just dance with the energy, sometimes it's really overwhelming for me. Like, I'm really uncomfortable, and like, I want to move through that in the best way possible. And sometimes that just involves like, okay, I need to take a bath. But if I'm actively working with those energies and actively releasing, or just as a practice, I want to be in my body, connecting with my five senses, because that gives me that presence, that mindfulness to remain conscious. That's a pathway for me to remain conscious, where I can get behind the energy. I can work with it, and it doesn't feel so overwhelming. I don't go unconscious, and I can actually remain present, which is that's how you work with it and release it. So thank you so much for that, because I have many things that I do. Even eating is like, okay, I'm going to enjoy my food right now. I'm going to take a minute. I'm going to take 5 minutes and because we don't think
that we on some level, the ego doesn't think we deserve pleasure, or it also thinks we deserve more of it. It's just this weird dance that we've just been programmed of.
Yes.
There's something wrong with taking the time to have pleasure through our senses are our feel good portals.
Yes.
They are gifts for us to enjoy life. So I love that. That's kind of where we've gone with this whole mental health arc, right?
Yes. Yes.
Because the opposite of that, you call it the dark night of the soul. There's many names, and sometimes we'll have a series of dark nights, right? But we're at our lowest, just, really having a hard time not letting ourselves be overtaken by these firing emotions. there's that. And then there's this other side of this spectrum of just feeling of contentment and joy, and life has such beautiful meaning, and there's so much grace that abounds. And making that leap, what I found that takes me literally from those moments to the other side of joy, the dark moments to the joy, is gratitude.
Yes.
So you mentioned that. You mentioned like Michael Singer is like, oh, great. Now I'm feeling this thing, this pain, and I would even take it a step further. Like, I'm so grateful because now I get to put this, to rest.
Yes. I
get to feel this. I have a human body and I'm on earth right now, and I get to feel this deeply. Yes. Mm-hmm. And when you do that, the charge is released.
Yes. The charge is released.
Yes. It doesn't mean the memory of it goes away.
Yes.
It just means that it doesn't have its grips on you anymore. And you
That's
have
exactly right.
semblance of presence to actually, I call it alchemy, just alchemizing that. Like you are the master of that. You're like the sorcerer and the witch. And you're like, yep, I'm alchemizing this. This is moving through me. And I get it. Right. Yeah. It's not easy to do when you're triggered. I'm just saying.
No, it's not
easy to do.
It's not. What really, I think what makes the difference between being able to do it and not being able to do it, though, is exactly what you said, knowing that on the other side of that is that joy. That joy, it's there. It's there. It's
coexisting with it. Like you said before, you're holding it.
Yes,
it's already there.
Yeah. It's there. Yes. And if I can do this, if I could stay present with this moment that I don't like, and that I want to resist, and I want to tell the other person, and I want to, if I could stay present and relax behind the energy and even have fun with it, allow it to just totally overtake me and enjoy that, and enjoy all the different qualities of it on the other side is a joy and a love and a pleasure that I wouldn't have been able to experience. And can I get a little graphic?
Yeah, sure.
With you right now? Okay. So I just want to say that one byproduct of this work, that my orgasms are so much more accessible to me now, like multiple orgasms and but it's like, that's
you had to get in your body and allow yourself to, Yep.
And it is so cool because when you're going through that, you're not thinking like, okay, just hang on, Tia, you're going to have a better orgasm. It just feels like, I don't like this. Screw this. But if we could just stay with it and allow life to take us there, the pleasure on the other side of that it's so cool. It's so unbelievable. And I'm hoping that that's what I can give the world through my own, just my experience, through my experience of that, and just letting out that energy and I know this, and this is what your message is, the more I can experience that, the more I can give that to others. And that's really the whole point.
It's really just the gift of your presence when you are present. With mental health, what I found, because what you're talking about is being embodied, which is just being right there with it, present to the emotions, the intensities, but also being behind it going, this isn't going to overtake me. Right. So that is living sensually. Yeah. And just not attaching a judgment on this emotion or that emotion. It's just letting it fly. Right. But what I found with mental health is that when people truly learn to get into their body, because what happens is when there's trauma, we disassociate.
Yes.
When there's uncomfortable feelings, we repress or suppress. And so we bypass over that. Mm-hmm. So I just want to, maybe we kind of wrap up with that, just invitation to our listeners to, get out of the mental chatter, get out of the head, move into the heart and the body and that somatic expression. And that will actually begin to move and alchemize these unprocessed traumas and these charged emotions really that are living inside of us, which is the root of all illness, especially mental illness.
Yes.
So how can people find you, Tia? Where do they go to get your good stuff?
Oh, thank you. So I'm on Instagram and I'm on Facebook. I have a Facebook group. We've got over 560 members, and it's a place where women go to create their ideal and most beautiful, delicious marriages. It's called Create a Marriage That Sparkles. The community is so beautiful because when a member asks a question, you can just hear there's no blame, there's no judgment. They really honestly want to create this unbelievable relationship, and they're not attached to that, to their problems. So, that's a way out for them. And it's a way to really understand everything that we're saying here on a much deeper level, to really implement it and integrate it. So you can access my Facebook group by just going to my Facebook page, which is Tia Jade.
Awesome. Well, thanks for your time. This was so fun.
Thank you. This was so fun. We can talk about this for hours, obviously.
Totally. You know, when someone gets to the point where they're just like, I'm going to end things, that is such a vulnerable portal to power. Usually we think it's just about hopelessness, but reaching that point, I typically see that some kind of rescue ensues. Something shows up right in front of the person. I can't tell you how many times I've heard stories of people being to that point and then something just completely opening up right in front of them. And I have been there. And of course, you'll know that I have a sister that took her life. I also have an aunt that took her life. Life is going to bring us to the point where we feel like there's no return. It's never going to get better. Typically, it is those times that we feel on fire or dead, those two polarities. And I'm just going to give you this from my heart. It is never permanent, that feeling. Never. It hits that low, and that's an alert to look at your stored pain and to reach out. And if you do, if you can have the semblance of mind to reach out to someone you trust, there will be an answer, and that person will come to your mind. Knowing that we all have this relationship to pain, we all have this fear of death, we all have this relationship to wanting to die or a craving for death. And actually, some of you know I study the Mary Magdalene path, and one of the 7 deadly sins, if you will, or the 7 gates referenced in the book The Beloved Companion, which takes apart Mary's gospel, is this craving for death. That's actually one of the gates. So the antidote, whether you're male or female, is to dance in your feminine energy, to find and access that place within you that wants to feel heard, seen, and felt. So I hope you found meaning in this episode. Come join our conversation on the Women Seeking Wholeness Facebook group, as well as Instagram, cherie.burton. Have a glorious 2 weeks, and we'll talk to you next time on Women Seeking Wholeness.